Welcome to Mastering Flower Photography. My name is Amy Renfrey. I'm a digital photographer, digital photography teacher and author. I've put together this video presentation for you today to help you get started in mastering the art of flower photography. Photographing flowers are absolutely beautiful. Whether you do it professionally as a florist, or whether you sell your prints, or whether you just love flowers that much that you want to photograph them and either give them away to your friends or hang them as prints on the wall, this tutorial will really help you. So let's get started. There are three main things to remember in flower photography. A tightly cropped flower photo always works best. What this means is that we need to eliminate a lot of irrelevant background subjects, and I'll go into that in just a moment. We're always aiming for even light in a photograph, particularly with your flowers, because the closer you move into the flower, the less light you're going to have, simply because a flower usually is a small subject to work with. So one of the things I recommend to do is photograph your flowers on a cloudy day. That will give you an even light. So what you're aiming for is light that's evenly spread across your photograph. The next thing is to always keep your flower in focus. It can be very difficult to get close up to a flower and still maintain the sharp clarity and focus. I'll go into that in a moment. Here's an example of a tightly cropped flower photo that works really well. I've deliberately included a black and white photograph in here to show you not to forget about black and white photography with your flowers. Colour is absolutely beautiful, but as you can see, black and white adds a classiness, adds a timelessness to your flower photography. And here we have a flower that's now a colour photo. As you can see, the vibrant orange really stands out to the viewer's eye. The reason that this works so well is this is a tightly cropped photo and there's no distraction in the background. You can plainly see that there's grass in the background, but there's nothing to distract our eye from the main subject or the beauty of the photo. Now the background should be out of focus as much as possible. I've included this photo. This is actually a sepia photo, and I've included this as well as the black and white to show you how beautiful flowers can be in sepia and black and white as well as colour. These are other mediums that I encourage you to use also. A lot of people ask me, what is the best setting to have the camera on when you're taking pictures of flowers? Well, I can honestly say that if you change the dial to the flower setting up the top, as you'll see there where the arrow is, you'll get clearer shots up close. Now this does sound a little obvious, but how does this work? This is commonly known as a macro setting in photography. Macro simply means all-encompassing, or big if you like, for basic terms, and flower photography works best with macro. What this setting actually does, it allows you to get closer into the subject, being your flower, without losing the definition and without losing focus. If you continue with your flower photography and you find that the flower setting is not quite enough, what you can do is you can invest in some macro lenses. If you have an SLR camera, you will find that you'll have the ability to have interchangeable lenses. That means you can unscrew the lens from the front of the camera and simply screw on your macro lenses to give you a sharp, close-up definition shot of your flower. If you don't have a camera that has this facility, then here's a quick little tip that you can use at home. If the macro setting is not quite enough, what you can do is practice with a magnifying glass. It's a very basic example, I know, but it will help you get into thinking about how flowers are best taken. Now don't forget, if you are using a magnifying glass, make sure it's squeaky clean. Make sure that you clean it with proper lens cleaning equipment, and you can buy a lens cleaning kit that does the job. So what about light, and how does light specifically work in flower photography? Now, as I briefly touched on before, you can take your flower pictures in low light, but the closer you get, the less light that you have on the flower surface. And the reason for this is simply because flowers are small subjects. So what about the flash? Oh, I wouldn't recommend it for flower photography at all. As you can see, this flower against the pot is not a great photo composition wise either, but as you can see, the flash completely overexposes the petals, leaving them lifeless and void of colour and vibrancy. Flash that's too close will usually overexpose most things. You see, think of a flash like a torch, and with the torch it extends a certain distance. And if you have something too close within that distance, you will find that it's just too bright. With your flower photography, always keep your camera still. If you're taking photos outside, you'll notice that they move in the breeze, and it can be quite hard to get an accurate shot sometimes. So the best thing to invest in is a tripod. It will keep your camera rock still. As an alternative, if you don't have a tripod, you can get what's called a mini pod, which is just a small tripod that rests on a wall or table. This is very handy for flower photography. So what about taking photos inside? You may have noticed in the past that you'll find your flower shots are quite disappointing inside, and that's for a number of reasons, mainly the light. It's just a little bit risky, so unless you have a lot of light in your home, I would recommend actually taking your flowers outside and shooting them in filtered light. You see, inside it's usually very dim, and there's not enough for a small surface like a flower to be taken well. Because you need to move in relatively close to your flower, the front of the photo is actually quite well lit, but behind the flower, just at the back there, you'll find that it's too dark. This is why I recommend take your flower outside and photograph it there. Now, there is a way you can photograph flowers inside, but it's using natural light. What you can do is put your flower into a vase and photograph it under a window. This way you'll be getting the beautiful filtered window light that makes flower photography work. As an addition to that, you can then turn the overhead light on to add even more light. Another quick tip is use a mirror for the light on the opposite side of the window. What this does, it creates another light source coming from a different angle, and it will actually fill in some of your shadows. It creates a delicate, sweet light to stop any hard shadows. Now, this is actually the same flower in sepia here. I took the shot of the yellow flower simply because I love the colour and I wanted to test out this window light theory. But I actually changed it because I didn't like the background. I moved in closer to cut the background out. I used some macro lenses to get clear focus up close, and I changed the format to sepia. So let's have a look at what the flower looks like in different formats and as a different composition. As you can see, it looks like almost a completely different flower. Now, here are some comparison flowers. This is just a basic snap that I took in the garden of a rose. This is to demonstrate how a background can be quite distracting. As you can see, the first place we look is the rose in the middle, and then we look to the left, which is actually a pink geranium. Now, we don't want to do that with flower photography. We want the main focal point as the flower itself, not the background competing with the flower. Now, here it is again without the background distraction. As you can see, it's a lot better, and all I've done is I've moved in closer. I've walked in about 1.5 meters, and I've moved my body physically in closer to get this photo. If I wanted to, I could have moved even closer in. The next shot I've taken here as an example is of this beautiful apricot rose. Now, the flower itself is fine, but once again, it's a distracting background. And when you look at it, you can't help look at the brickwork in the background. So here's another way that I've used to take this photo, but it's a little bit different. As you can see, I've moved right in close to the flower. I've taken some macro lenses and I've taken the shot. Now, rather than taking the standard shot front on, I've actually moved to the side. I think this gives a very feminine and delicate feeling to this flower. Now, here is an example of what we call hard light. Hard light is simply where there's too much light in one area and not enough light in the other. Flowers that are taken this way often experience hard light. Here's an example of a rose taken with soft light. As you can see, everything is well lit. And this is what I was talking about before as far as even light goes, and this is the type of light that we're aiming for in our flower photography. Thank you for watching Mastering Flower Photography. For more information about taking beautiful shots of your flowers and other digital photography topics, just go to my website, which is at the link below this video. Thanks very much, have a great day and happy shooting!